Hello, Ben Spalding here with the Spire Chamber Ensemble, and it's such a privilege to be here with my longtime colleague, Elizabeth Blumenstock, and we've been working together over a decade now. And so we wanted to do this educational video on what is the principles of Baroque playing, or what we call historically informed playing. So Elizabeth, we've worked together a long time. If you had to pick a few principles, a few key elements of Baroque playing and singing, and you only had a few minutes, what are the things that you would really want to instill in players and singers?
Well, it's a good question, and not always entirely easy to answer, but I will give it a shot. If I were working with singers, and there was a text to be listened to, and the orchestra members or other instruments have to play along with singers, I would be asking the singers to be very clear about the important words in their text, that they give extra emphasis to those, and they should know to do that. And I think most of them do, fortunately. But it's not something that necessarily comes second nature to instrumentalists accompanying singers. So I would encourage instrumentalists to be very attentive to the focus of the words, where the singers are finding the importance of the text, and support that in their sound and their gestures. That's the first principle. Then, of course, there's a huge amount of literature that is written without any singers, and there's no text. But curiously enough, a great deal of Baroque music is written as if there were words. Phrase lengths of Baroque music are often about the same as dependent and independent clauses in speech, and there are periods at the ends of phrases. The phrases, by and large, take about as much time to play in a piece of music as they would as if they were spoken sentences or phrases. So that is kind of one of the areas of sort of congruence between text and music in the Baroque era. So when you don't have the text, you're looking for what the interesting quote-unquote words in the music are. Where are the strong features in a text? I'd be looking for interesting harmonies, dissonances even. Those are usually focal points. They're like somebody saying an important word. I'd be looking for possibly some syncopations. Those are very arresting moments. Dum-ba-dee, dum-ba-dee, very insistent, almost urgent, and that people, you play through it without noticing that, you lose the meaning of the text, the musical text. Be looking at melodic impulses, where you really feel like you want to keep singing and pouring out sound. Those are all things that are critical elements of all music, really. But in the Baroque era, that was kind of the beginning of a real move to embed kind of rhetorical principles into music.
Great. So maybe we've been working on Messiah as Elizabeth's in Kansas City, and so maybe let's take a quick example of making music really pictorial. That's the kind of the words that I'm hearing.
Sure.
And maybe can you play it one way of something that's not as vivid and
right.
colorful in it, and then maybe try it in a more rhetorical way that you would play.
All right, so at the beginning, for example, which is an instrumental section, it's the symphony before the oratorio truly begins, he just writes grave, which means slow and serious, and it looks like this on the page. Very nice kind of a line. It turns out that in this kind of repertoire, when you see dotted rhythms like ba, ba, pa, there was often a practice of over-dotting, making the short note even shorter. And contextually, even though there's no text, contextually, this is the beginning of a vast story, a big story told through scriptural pieces of scripture from beginning to end before we hear any text. So Handel is trying to set the tone, and he probably doesn't want anything too ordinary. That's a little ordinary. So we have elected, and most performances do elect, to overdot the short notes, and also to add some ornamentation, also something that was done to emphasize interesting notes or to help a line go somewhere or stop and enjoy itself a little bit. So you come up with something a little bit more like this. which is considerably more dramatic, and you can imagine a whole orchestra doing something like that. You can imagine it has quite a striking impact. Dotted rhythms are wonderful, and this is the element of rhythmic input. A long note encourages you to savor it, whereas the short note encourages you to move on.
Yeah.
So there's this sense of hesitation and waiting and developing and then moving on. It's very dramatic that way. And you don't get that if you simply play through the notes as they appear on the page. So that's one example.
Wonderful. I love that. So also, as in most of the choral orchestral rep that we do in the Baroque probably needs to have a conductor, and not always, but it is. Some of them are you're wrangling a bunch of people, and it is helpful to have somebody that can kind of put all the pieces together. So what are the most important things that you are looking for now in a conductor, if you're doing Messiah or Bach B minor Mass or Israel in Egypt, pieces like that? What are the things that inspire you from a conductor standpoint?
The things that really help, I think, for all musicians, because all musicians at a good level love music a lot. And that's why they do it, right? Because they really love. There are very few musicians, I know very few musicians who just go to it for the money, because frankly, there are better ways to make a lot of money if that's your goal. Not that we're badly paid, we are not. But it's not, it's something for the committed, passionate person. Knowledge of the score and its history is really a huge plus from a conductor. And I have to say, you've just gotten better and better in that regard.
Thank you.
I was so entertained and informed by your comments about the Requiem last spring. Yeah. And this man is always on the hunt for more knowledge, and that's something all conductors would do well to emulate. It is encouraging to players to know that the person who gets up and takes a great deal of the credit, though not all, is also somebody who cares about the music. That is incredibly valuable. Plus, all of us love learning something about the music that we might not know. So that's really an important thing for me. I really appreciate that. It's great if a conductor has worked out an understanding of body language. Body language is our oldest language. It came when we were grunting and groaning and moaning and shrieking. Before we had words, we still had body language, and every other animal in our tribe would know what we meant with it. So it's really important because it's a visual thing. You know, you can't just conduct like this and expect to get the whole range of emotion that is present in this piece, for example, or any other, from a very controlled approach. Something more generous, something more explicit. So clarity of body language is incredibly important. And the more a conductor has refined their sense of what works to get the response they want, the quicker we get things done well. So that's really important.
Great.
Yeah.
So in most instances, a conductor always has a concertmaster, concert mistress. And so Elizabeth and I have had the opportunity to collaborate on many, many projects. So it's a kind of a shared leadership in a way. What do you need from me as a conductor, as a concertmaster, and what are the situations when you're a concertmaster that you really thrive in?
Well, the less I have to say to everybody, the better. I feel my role is if I'm communicating with the other string players largely, or occasionally somebody in other parts of the band, but mostly more local, you know, the violin sections and maybe the violas, and occasionally the bass, are fine points of how they're delivering what I have understood the conductor wants, what you've asked for, and I'm hearing something that doesn't seem like quite that, and I make suggestions as to how we can accomplish your goal for the interpretation in a more suave and convincing manner, a more controlled and more unified manner. That's kind of where I feel most of my role is. I occasionally feel like if we've wound up at too slow a tempo or too fast a tempo, it's part of my job to somehow indicate that. And sometimes I'll look pleadingly at the conductor, you know, one way or another, which with a sensitive conductor is all it takes. That's really valuable because there are some tempi that are so slow as actually to lose the sense of the music. The harmonies are moving so slowly that it's like somebody plodding on a walk. whereas the harmonies have a natural pace to them. You want to move from one to the other in a way that's appropriate for the feeling of the piece. So I do occasionally communicate with the conductor about tempo, but not usually. I don't usually get up and say it's too fast. I have done that, but not with you.
Okay.
Very, very seldom.
Yeah.
I've had to do it in a couple situations. I remember one time I just said, it's just too fast.
Yeah.
And that does happen. But it's rare. I guess I could turn the question around and say, what do you feel you need from a concertmaster?
Yeah, I love somebody that I can trust, that I know that there's certain things that they are going to take care of. I cannot be the expert on every single instrument in the room. There's just no way. I don't play violin. I mean, I did when I was in elementary music methods, and it was atrocious. But I really appreciate a concertmaster that can kind of sense my energy and know that they can jump in. Right? It is difficult though when I'm really trying to get a certain agenda done, and people are interrupting all the time.
This is super difficult thing, because the reality is our lives are limited by time. We don't have endless time. And there's a good aspect to that too, because if we tighten things up and really work on the music as well as we can, but there's always that little moment where somebody needs to say something to their section, and we know the clock's ticking, and that is probably the most stressful part of working up towards a concert for me, as a leader.
Wonderful. Maybe the last thing we'll say, because a lot of graduate choral conductors are going to watch this video. Let's pick a chorus. Actually, this is a good chorus on For Unto Us a Child is Born. And can you really play it in your most demonstrative, rhetorical way, and so they can really
Well, this is kind of interesting, because Handel, not being a native speaker, he sometimes puts words that are not necessarily very strong in places in the music that inherently are strong, like the downbeat of a bar, right? So you have, and I would prefer to just play it as if it were music written for the way it appears, a strong downbeat.
Okay.
But when you come to the text at the beginning is, "For unto us a child is born." So you'd never say it that way. You wouldn't say "for." You'd say "For unto us." Yeah. "For unto us a child is born." But he did not set it that way. So we either try to imitate, which I think winds up sounding kind of feeble.
Yeah.
If we go, it's a little weird.
Yeah.
So I think we just get out there proudly and happily and go, right? It's really just kind of what we think it would be. It's a slightly different pronunciation of the words.
And I think
that's the character comes
exactly.
across.
And if anything, I think to maybe kind of put a bow on all of this, that we keep hearing words like character and just vivid and pictorial. And I think all of us want to make music that is like that has a range of emotions. And maybe the point of music is for composers to translate human emotions onto paper. And then we have the great privilege of sharing that sound in real time with ourselves and with our audience.
That's a great point. And I just want to say something about when we now start to call this repertoire, Baroque repertoire, rhetorical music. And I just want to say what a great analog there is. That's a perfect term, because it was quite deliberately done. If someone writes a great speech, has full of great rhetoric, like the "I Have a Dream" speech, which was partly improvised, and Kennedy's inaugural address in 1961, which was fully written down. Those are very powerful speeches. Somebody wrote those speeches. In fact, several somebodies wrote those speeches, especially the Kennedy one. And they crafted the words with rhetorical devices, repetitions, re-emphasizing things. A great deal of care was paid to choosing good words, strong words, meaningful words. But if somebody gets up and says, "I have a dream," who cares? And you remember, I can't forget, "I have a dream." Yeah. It was like a thunderbolt to listen to that. It was staggering. So delivery is incredibly important. And ultimately, the point of making music that is rhetorical like that is to turn on the part of the brain that processes speech, because that is where meaning is. So when you do a great rhetorical performance, people go away feeling that they have received wisdom, feeling, and understanding, because it's meaningful that way.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Elizabeth, for taking some time to share, and all the best to all of you as you continue your studies. Good night.